All right, everyone, welcome back to Better Advertising with Better Media. Today, I'm incredibly excited to talk to one of my favorite LinkedIn follows. I think we've been connected for quite some time at this point, and you have posted some incredible content. So, Preston
Thank you.
Rutherford of Chubbies is now officially here. Preston, I would love to, first and foremost, just give a little backstory on how you got started and what brought you to being a LinkedIn influencer as well.
Yeah, keyboard warrior. So, gosh, quick background. I'll try to keep it brief, but lucky enough to be a co-founder of a men's lifestyle apparel brand called Chubbies. We started it back in 2011, and crazy journey, like ups, downs, the whole entrepreneurial journey, as I'm sure you know about, and a lot of your listeners probably know about. And then the general idea of Chubbies, right, is to just kind of like bring fun and irreverence and levity and a little bit of like a retro vibe to, I don't know what you want to call it, fun lifestyle clothing. Started with more of like a shorts focus and shorts and swim trunks and stuff you'd wear on vacation, but over time, right, it broadens and evolves, which is amazing to see. And the business was very fortunate to have been acquired and is now part of a public company and doing extremely well. I guess one of the best quarters ever in the history of the business was reported in last quarter. So that's amazing to see. And I think it kind of speaks to some of the power of building a brand and being able to go multi-channel and being able to sort of like grow beyond what any of us ever thought was possible. So that's a little bit about me. And then, oh yeah, now working on working on a new sort of thing that is this thing called Marathon, where our whole mission is to solve what was the biggest problem for us while we were operating at Chubbies, which was how do we transition from this place where we call it our midlife crisis, where we became sort of like obsessed with, bottom funnel demand capture because of all of the things that we all know about, right? Felt highly measurable, felt highly accountable, felt like I could put $1 in and get $1 out. But, the diminishing returns catch up to us all. And we got ourselves in a place where we weren't, generating net new demand and reaching more people to keep up with our growth, grow the brand to keep up with the growth of the company. And so we had to figure out how to, as performance marketers in our hearts and souls and our core being, had to figure out how to invest in whatever you want to call it, demand gen or brand or awareness. Any of these terms are, some of them have a little bit more tinge than others to we performance marketers, but figure out how to invest in it in a way that was fully accountable as performance, and get back to just sort of like building this resilient organic baseline that fed the funnel, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But it was hard to measure, right? Because there were no tools that made it possible, nor was there like an operating framework. So that's kind of what we're working on now, is helping brands with sort of like measurement software, holdout testing, advisory, help them transition to a balance of brand performance. So, now that I'm hawking new wares, I thought it would make sense to just kind of like try to be as helpful as possible on LinkedIn by just sharing all the mistakes that I made and things that I've learned. And hopefully, if by being helpful, it helps the readers and, maybe they want to check out what we're up to, and then maybe we can be helpful to them in a more deep level. So that's what brought me, I guess, to being an internet writer or creator of content, whatever the term might be.
I love that. And I will, convince anyone who is currently listening or watches this video later on to go and hit the follow button. And the reason I'll give
Thank
that
you.
shout out is because what you've been able to accomplish in under 2 years is what I feel like it's been, is incredible. And the reason I feel like your content does so well is because of how well it resonates with people and brands. And you all built Chubbies in that peak period of D2C, I think, being incredibly successful. Ad cost and acquisition costs were much cheaper. Then everyone kind of hit this point of, oh, we maybe need to figure something else out. We see the same thing in kind of the retail media space. I think AI is also driving a shift in how we acquire customers and what points of the funnel we may target a customer. But you have found a way to break that down in a really incredible fashion. Some of my favorite posts that you do are the conversations with the CFO. And it's really, dealing with that problem that I am trying to deal with every single day. And it's like a brand saying, I want a $20 ROAS, but I also want incredible growth in the category. And, the CEO is putting that pressure and pressure. And you break it down in a way that I think makes it digestible for brands, which is the first step. The second step is then I think the implementation and the execution of that. For you all and what you went through, how did you start that journey of maybe pulling from performance and investing in more brand and justifying brand?
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words regarding the content. It's what I should say is all of the ideas or the concepts. The way it kind of played out is I was the one doing it wrong, and then Tom and Rainer and Kyle, the other founders, and the rest of the team at Chubbies, they were the ones like fixing everything that I messed up. So they're all the smart ones. I guess I can, and then maybe one of the reasons why it might resonate is just because the mistake or the problem caused is just so viscerally felt by me that I could just write about it very fluidly. But it's all them. And the so the point about like tactics, it's interesting, right? Because as you know, in the day to day, everything's so messy, right? It's kind of like fire drills and chaos. For us, it was exactly that. We were just trying not to go out of business. But as it relates to what a transition could look like, I mean, I think one of the things that we learned ourselves and what we're learning with the brands that we work with now is that a couple of things, at least as it relates to, and I'm less fluent in retail media, so you can educate me here, but at least as it relates to meta predominantly, which is where a lot of brands spend the rest of their money, it's gotten to a place where the thing that everyone is doing has gotten so expensive, but people just keep doing it because that's the only place where there's comfort, that there is. So let's just say every dollar is definitely not incremental, is not driving incremental growth, right? So I don't know what the number is, but it's different for every brand. But let's just say the last 20% of your spend is doing nothing for you, or 20% of your spend. It doesn't necessarily have to be the last 20% because maybe you're seeking ROAS to your point, and the thing that takes your blended ROAS to XYZ in platform is, I don't know, heavy retargeting or hitting existing customer. So, but again, it goes to some amount of our spend is not changing behavior. So with that being the case, one of the best ways to start with investing in brand or awareness or demand gen is just to audit where we're spending our dollars right now. Tests, pulse tests up and down, pull things here and there, and remove the ego from it,
Yeah.
right? Because I think one of the things I really struggled with personally is, I feel like I'm a good person if my ROAS is up, and I feel like I'm a piece of junk if my ROAS is down, right? So it was very inextricably tied. So that's looking at things just from a truth perspective and just disassociating from the idea that ROAS up is good, right? And just trying to get an understanding of what good is and what truly leads to business growth, business results, which is like maximizing contribution or variable profit dollars, right? So the dollars we have left over after our COGS, after marketing spend, after discounts and a bunch of other stuff. But those are kind of like the big swingers, shipping and fulfillment. So optimizing for that is also maybe like, let's call it number 2 that we really have to do. So get contribution being the thing in the organization that everyone's optimizing for, and not just getting folks that data 3 weeks after month end, which is kind of like, it's like a single monthly readout for, at least that's kind of where it started for us. But, and all credit to our team, being able to get it, at least for the e-com business, being able to get that data to the team the next day for the day, right? We're just instrumenting like per order actuals and getting all of this data. Like, how much did it cost to get the revenue I got yesterday?
Yeah.
And let's optimize for the post variable cost number. Because once we start doing that, we start to see that there's a lot of, the sheen kind of wears off our previous view of what good was. So that being number 2, just getting everyone oriented around contribution. The other thing is number 3 is like people incentives. So I'm not really talking about marketing tactics because it's all this other stuff that kind of like provides the context for these decisions to be made internally. 2 is incentives for people, and that takes time, right? But bonusing people and giving them their goals, not based on revenue, but on contribution and EBITDA. Big changer, right? That then makes it okay to make different decisions. Whereas if you're gold on a monthly revenue number, a quarterly revenue number, doing anything that might hurt that, right, it's not possible because it directly affects your pocketbook. So that big number three is like incentives. But then as it relates to the tactics, like the marketing tactics, once you have those things in place, then it's like, okay, mindset change. Is everyone aligned that there's a problem to solve that is within our control? So I went through this process. It's probably like the 5 stages of grief, denial being one of them, right? Where it's like, it's an election year, or it's Temu, or some big advertiser, or it's a new algorithm update, or whatever it might be, where I don't really take ownership. And I'm just like, I kind of think it'll just get solved, these diminishing returns or CAC going up or whatever it might be, ROAS, chasing it. But taking ownership, knowing that it's something that is on us and that we have a problem. Like everyone, we have a problem. So therefore, that being step one. Step two is the tactics and strategies and measurement and definitions of success that we had been using, therefore have to change. So the classic, what got us here won't get us there. And once we're in that place, everyone's open. We have aligned incentives. We're measuring from a financial CFO perspective the right things, the things that the CFO wants us optimizing for, which is how much cash is moving through the P&L. Then at that point, we can start doing some of these tactics. And from like a paid media perspective, back to the original point about lack of incrementality for some non-trivial percentage of spend, that then allows you to try some other things that the non-incrementality of the spend, coupled with just the dramatic relative expensiveness, for lack of a better word, knowing it's a horrible word, allows you to just try other things on the ad platforms. Maybe it's like a different campaign type that is not a sales campaign. So you're just entering these different auctions. So if you want to call them arbitrage opportunities or whatever it might be, I don't like that term, but it's what we found. And I think what we found back then is it opens up net new reach. It lowers our cost to reach 1,000 accounts is like one of the terms that has been getting a lot of talk. So I think just from that perspective, that has helped us just experimenting, right? And then the other thing is just looking at the creative that we're running, right? If we got to a place, I think many brands start where maybe like 50% of the creative that's going out there, and I'm talking like paid, organic, email, website, was like brand building in some form, right? When we start, right? That's how we rise above the noise. And then the rest was like, buy my thing right now. Over time, though, that shifts to like 95 of all of the impressions that we're putting out there. 95% is more, buy my product right now.
Yeah.
And so from a creative perspective, just generating memories that then will get people to seek us out so that we don't have to fight for that click in that news feed, but they search for our brand or they come into a retail's digital presence or in store and they just seek us out, right? Where we have become the automatic choice and it's less of a rational where I'm competing on price and features. But that comes back to the content and the creative that we put out there. So that has to change too, but all of this requires a different way to measure, a different way to think about what we're getting for what we're buying, because it's not clicks and short-term purchases, but it could be branded organic searches. It could be more people coming to our website inbound. It could be an increase in revenue per session on your website on a blended basis. It could be just focusing on building this thing that we call like your resilient baseline of revenue and of new customer acquisition. That more like a subscription business, I totally understand it, but like even from a new customer engine perspective, like what's the new customer acquisition I keep getting if I turn these other things off? So long-winded, of course, but that's kind of like the 5-part plan for how to transition.
I love it. I love it. I think there's two really key things I'd like to reiterate on there. And the first one I'll say is I do think we get caught up in this just because we can does not mean we should mentality. One, what builds your brand in the early stages is, highly profitability focused retargeting tactics, things like that. And with all of the, new age rollouts across both, like everything I've seen on the meta side, the retail media side, they give us incredible control over who we're targeting. And I think we get really excited and caught up about being able to retarget or provide someone the perfect creative asset, the perfect point of time. But at the end of the day, we're not creating a larger or net new pool of customers. So even though the return looks incredible, sometimes we have to go back to the baseline. Like, we're too busy being advertisers that sometimes we forget to be marketers. I think we
Mm.
forget to say who's our end customer, and are we disrupting their day in driving that loyalty? And that can be difficult because as advertisers, we want to hit them at the perfect point of time. We want to hit an incredible ROAS, incredible conversion rate, but we forget to drive that disruption, that awareness that I think a lot of people who have built the most successful brands have really leaned into. The second thing I think it's really important that you
For
called
sure.
out is the creative and the awareness side as its own standalone point. Because I think with the direction we are seeing the retail media platforms go and AI go, we, I think, all have a chat GPT that knows way too much about us because people started uploading screenshots of their relationships and, giving it all of this context that it shouldn't have. I can now go to my chat GPT and say, hey, I'm looking to buy new shoes. And my chat GPT knows my athleticism, my diet,
Hmm.
my familial style, and that I'm a fan of Nikes. And it's going to give me Nikes. And I think this is important because we've seen the shift in the last 6 years where performance marketing became so heavy because it had such a strong return and we were able to target customers. But now I think we're kind of going to see a shift back to brand because you have to have that initial disruption. You have to have that TV ad or XYZ ad to drive the education. Because if you wait for someone to type into chat, what product do they want? Chat's going to give them a very small selection. The discoverability is not there anymore. So you need to drive that awareness traditionally in order to convince your customer to then go to chat or XYZ and type in your brand name, or else you're going to lose that customer. What are your thoughts about like the future of the industry in that regard?
I saw that's awesome. I love that. Good point. And if you just think about, I think when we have these conversations about brand and to bring it back to our actual actions as humans ourselves, like how do we shop? If we go through our credit card statement and we just look at, just like reflect on the journey to that purchase and that
No,
purchase,
thank you.
well, I know, but it's like the thing that gets even the CFO to be like, okay, I see that's important. Where it's kind of like this notion of shortcuts, right? Like, why did I purchase that thing from that brand or from that whatever? It's like objectively, was it the lowest price? Objectively, did it have the best features? Objectively, did I go through this deep analysis where I created a spreadsheet of pros and cons and I did blah blah? No,
No.
it's because I use shortcuts, and that's the thing. Like to your point, where when we then go into these new ways of acquiring information, we're using shortcuts. Like we're not going to go through this whole, like when you prompt it, it'll be like what's the best pair of shoes? And in the same way that like Google, whatever, was built on backlinks as the proxy for reputation and quality, is similar, obviously similar process. It's just predicting the next token, right? So it's like, what are you predicting based off of, right? Probabilities and things like that. But it's based on shortcuts, right? There's like, it's the same. Like nothing, everything changes, but nothing changes, I guess is my point, right? Where to the extent we can do the things that keep our brand as the shortcut for more and more people, right? That's kind of, and then you're like, well, how do you measure that? Well, obviously, search volume is one of them. If you're on Amazon, right, you can look at your brand search volume. Like, how is that trending? What's happening? How is that as a percentage of your overall revenue on the platform? And it's what's your retail sell through at reg price? Like, it's all these sort of things that you can, yeah, they're lagging, but it kind of gives you a directional read. Another interesting stat that I heard was that, like AI mode on Google is like killing clicks.
Yeah.
And, but it's having the opposite impact, at least from this study, this data set, right? Blah, blah, blah. Disclaimer. It's having the opposite effect on branded searches,
Mhm.
where the proclivity to then ultimately go from search to click on a branded term is actually going up, whereas it's dramatic. Now, why? I don't totally know. Maybe it's because more people are getting used to not seeing the links because of
Yep.
AI mode filling the top. But just that general idea of like the power of having search. And again, I know search is changing and it's going more in ChatGPT, but it's the same thing. Like to have you enter the word Nike or enter the word Chubbies or enter the word whatever into that text field where you're conveying intent, where you've like become the shortcut that is a part of that desire is like
Yep.
that much more important, right? In this era of AI. And I know some people have been like, brand is dead and brand's dead. And like, right. Cause you can like, was it Scott Galloway talks about like AI is like weapon of mass diligence or something like that. I love his sayings. They're really good. And he's a branding agency guy. So I mean, he's just good at what he does to get people to talk. He's doing the thing. And, but just from that data that I referenced, just this general idea of like a shortcut is becoming on a relative basis and an objective like nominal basis that much more valuable. Like if your
Absolutely.
brand can be a part of that search, it's like going like this. It's like massive departure. So it's like, God, that's to your point, a return to brand. Yeah. I mean, it's becoming all that much more important as everything else becomes commoditized away.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the last word there is key, the commoditization. That is why Amazon's driven the shift, in my opinion. As you said, you go to Amazon, you type in water bottle. You now see 50 different water bottles. What are the main levers people search by? The main image, the price point, and the reviews. If you did not stand out prior to that search being made, a customer is going to vet you against everyone else on those three factors. No one wants to be the lowest price. I think that's a never ending battle. Everyone's kind of averaging out on the review side. Amazon has strict guidelines on your main image. So if you can drive that education awareness prior to the search being made, which is what Preston I think is saying here, it's the more agentic approach, it's the shortcut. But in order to drive that shortcut, you have to be in your customer's mind before they decide they are ready to make the search. And AI is doing the same thing when it comes to, chat gpt and the commercialization, things along those lines. If you wait for the search to be made, you better hope they're using brand, or else your opportunity to then get in front of them, because as we all know, the digital shelf's not unlimited, the retail shelf's not unlimited, and I don't think the AI search is going to be either. And I think that drives a really strong opportunity, I think, to lean into brand a little bit earlier on than I think what everyone else is doing. And the brands that we have seen be successful, the Chubbies, the Dude Wipes, the Liquid Deaths, the Elf Cosmetics, they're all the disruptor brands that have leaned in heavy when, everyone else was maybe trying to focus a little bit more on the performance marketing side.
Totally. Yeah. Well, very well said. And like for all of them, those are all great examples, right? I mean, they're just doing things that earn our attention. Like they're adding value to my life, all of them.
Mhm.
They're doing something that I'm like, that's great. You
Yeah.
know, and I think it's how do I put that in a spreadsheet? I'm sure there's a way, but Sean talks about my main measure of success. He says impressions and stuff, but he said in another talk, he talked about my main measure of success of something that we did is if I got texts from a friend, because they're the truest barometer. If they text you, take time out of their day to say that was awesome. And so there's like this idea from like, let's hold ourselves to a higher standard in terms of the things that we do. Like, are we net adding value to people's lives with the things that we do, whether it's content, events, our product, how we talk about it? Like, is it just earning that, or are we just kind of like
Yeah.
sucking the juice out of whatever's there? I guess it always comes back to that, so I'm not saying anything. I guess it's not obvious, but just the general idea, like when was the last time you as a brand had someone text you about how awesome something was that you did, an email, an ad, a video, whatever.
It pulls you out into the broader spectrum, I think, of going back into kind of that general customer psychology and the marketing of just, living in their brains can be a little bit more important than constantly retargeting the same pool of customers. Now, everything we've said is much easier said than done. So I definitely want to give, last 5 minutes here, an opportunity for you to just give a shout out to what you are building. I think that we kind of high level went through it all, but I think we have a lot of brands that are asking me, how do I do this actually? What are the steps that I can take? And I think you're working to solve that problem. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that looks like and any advice that you could give the brands that are listening in.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thank you. So Yeah, the high level with Marathon, it's we're kind of setting out to help in whatever way we can, right? With software, with testing, with advisory, with creative for some brands. But it mostly starts with the software. Right? It's how do I even think about measuring top of funnel? How do I think about measuring this brand stuff? Awareness building, brand building, whatever term it is. But just how do I measure the stuff that I know is so valuable in doing all the things we just discussed, but that doesn't drive that short-term click and purchase necessarily? It doesn't mean it doesn't drive short-term revenue. And I think that's an important distinction to make. It could just be driving someone to come directly to your site and buy, or search your brand and buy, as we were just discussing. So how do we think about measuring that in a way where it just feels apples to apples like my performance marketing measurement? Fundamentally, it's a prediction, right? So that's why you have to validate everything with testing. But the general idea being there's a way to do it. We kind of scratched the surface a little bit while we were operating at Chubbies, and it was very transformational for us in taking us from like this performance obsessed, seeing this in our line to kind of getting back to the growth that we thought was possible and far more profitably. Where iOS 14 impacted us far less than other brands because the vast majority of our new customer acquisition was coming through owned and organic, people searching for a brand or coming direct to the site, which is what every brand wants, right? That's truly where like the cash generation comes, the accumulating advantages come. So it's largely a measurement problem. It's largely like a methodology problem. So we intend to help brands with that. So the website is just marathondataco.com, or just follow me on LinkedIn and give my posts thumbs down and whatever you want to do. But yeah, generally it's like a lot of people are dealing with this stuff, right? Because we graduate to these problems. They're like good problems to have because you've gotten to a place where you feel this need. But then it just requires like a new way of thinking, new way of operating, and not many brands have been able to successfully navigate that transition in a way where then for the next 10, 20 years they're growing and maintaining that growth and maintaining that profit growth. So hopefully, just given that I was blessed to be around folks way smarter than me and can help, share those lessons and then translate it into a product that people can use.
I love it. And I love that you mentioned, you have to change the thinking first. The methodology has to be aligned, and then you could start focusing on the execution and the reporting, which is going to help you then drive further buy-in and further investment.
Exactly. Yes. Well said.
Amazing. Well, it's been absolutely incredible having you on. Thank you again so
Thank
much for
you.
your time. Everyone, please go give a like, give a comment on Preston's stuff. He's doing incredible work and more people need to see his content. So thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you. This was a pleasure. I'm grateful to have been a part of it. It was awesome.
All right. Bye, guys.